Sorry about that. I had a work issue come up, and of course, after I asked you to all take a half an hour break, it was fixed in like 2 minutes. So I worked on some other stuff. And in that time, Tony came up with a way, the correct order to make the NavMesh agent stop and also become disabled only one
I just
time.
want to double check I have my health script right, because I believe I copied and pasted everything correctly. But I don't know if my health script is 100%
Okay.
correct. I just want to take a quick peek.
This is the whole thing.
Okay.
You want me to paste it in the chat window, or are you just looking at the screen?
I'm just looking at your screen. Game object set false. Yeah, it's all good. Sorry, I just wasn't quite sure, but thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to implement this change that Tony has suggested, where we're going to the update. So what was happening was the navmesh agent.is stopped was only being enabled, was only being set for one frame, and then it was continuing to not be stopped because it was not being told to stop. So the navmesh agent.is stopped equals true does need to be set in the else, and then we can check to see if we've already disabled it, and if we have it, then we'll disable it, and that will do everything in the correct order. So let's see if this does what we expect it to do. I think it will.
Mine seemed to work properly.
Yeah. So he's not chasing after me. Yeah. She does still navigate around him, but I think that's probably because she's so close behind him. I think if I spread them out, we can see that she should not. Let's go to the zombies in the scene. Grab this one. I'm just give her, set her further out, but I want her to take more or less the same path, so there we go. Now, shoot him when he gets on my screen. He's dead. And she... Oh, she's still pushing him around. Why? Why? Okay, so...
Do you think it's his actual capsule, or do you think it's his nav mesh?
No, it's because his NavMesh agent is still enabled. So...
Why don't we make a new if statement that says if dead equals true, then navmesh is disabled? Would that...
So if not... Oh, so what's happening here... So the is stopped is working correctly. What's happening here is... is disabled should be set to false originally. That's me being dumb. Okay, so if it is not disabled, right, because it starts off not disabled. So it was never processing this chunk of code. So if I save that and hit play, I think that'll do it. I think that'll get us there. This is not what we were going to do tonight. I've got another thing I want to show you, but whoop, sorry. No, it's doing that again.
Does it have an error? Or...
Yeah, it's saying yes. It's saying you're trying to call is stopped on something after you disabled it. But that's what I had in here. Control X and Control V. Save it. Oh. So what's happening is the zombie is... No? And not disabled. Let me think through this for a second. If I'm not dead and I haven't disabled my thing, then my NavMesh agent, yes. So that's what's happening. The if statement was evaluating as true because...
Hey, I'm back.
Because... No, because my health dot is dead should be... For one frame, my health dot is dead is still true. Let's try that. Okay, and now I'm going to look at... I can wait for her to run into him, but I can also just check and see. The NavMesh agent has been disabled correctly. and she should run right through him. Yes, that's it. Okay, so here's the final code. Oop.
I'm now getting an error that says null reference exception.
Okay, no reference exception means that you're trying to point to something that you have not defined in the game. So where is that
Shot
showing
handler.
up?
Shot handler, update assets, code line 37.
Okay, so I'm going to go to my shot handler.
Shot handler.
Line 37 is the health component, where it's where it tells it to take damage, which means you're hitting something that doesn't have a health script on it.
So that would be the... What would not have a health script? No.
Well, interestingly, we're gonna have to solve this problem in what I had planned to talk about tonight. So why don't you hang on a second and see if I don't get around to it.
I just got that weirdly because I reloaded Unity because Unity crashed.
Oh, okay.
And I
So
lost a couple of save
make sure
states.
that both of the zombies have a health script and
Yeah.
Try it again.
Yeah. I don't know what was wrong there. This is I always load up with the save that you email us, and so it just crashed for me. So I reloaded it, and error. Null render exception. It popped up again. So null reference exception.
Okay, and if you double click on it, it says in your line 37 of the shot handler.
Simple player, my script, shot handler, CS 37.
Okay, so that means it's line 37, and that line is the one where it says go get the health of the thing you hit. So we can debug it by, if you look at my screen, I'm going to put a debug line in here above it. So debug.log, and I'm going to get the Control C, debug.log, Control V, .toString.
Are you replacing this line of code, or are you
No,
putting
I went to the existing line 37, and I hit enter a couple of times to give myself some space, and I added this debug line. So the hit collider I haven't changed at all. I just added the debug line. This will spit out the thing into the console to tell you what you're hitting, which then we can check and see if that thing has health. So, so above where it says hit collider at game object get component, do this. I'll just copy and paste it so you can. In fact, let me just do the.
I got it. I
got it?
typed it all. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now when you hit play, and you shoot something.
Oh, now I have no error. This is interesting.
Okay.
Now I remember working with Unity.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it comes up again, that debug line should tell you what you're shooting that doesn't have a health thing, which is actually something we were going to talk about this evening because, as I mentioned at the beginning, when I was just going to fix the zombies very quickly, and we spent half an hour on it, I can shoot through the walls, which is not intended, right? We want the walls to give the player some anxiety, but also to block bullets. We could make a gun later on that does shoot through certain thicknesses of walls and different materials, and we're going to get to all of that. Or we can't. We're going to talk about after next week what we want to go forward with. But in the short term, I wanted to make the walls stop bullets. So the way that they do that is there's a simple expedient where I can just grab all the cubes, click add component, and add rigid body. Okay, so now I'm going to press play. And I get a no reference exception. The reason I get a no reference exception now is because I'm hitting the wall, and the wall doesn't have health. That's the reason I was asking you to tell me what you were hitting, because I run into this exception when I was preparing this for this course, for this session. So basically what it's saying is I see that you hit the wall, but in your logic, you told me to get rid of the health, and this wall doesn't have health. So I'm going to put a line of code right above this that says if hit.collider.gameObject.getComponent health. And with that line of code and a couple of curly braces here, now it will. What this says is, if this thing has health, then take damage. Called the take damage script on that object's health component. That way, it won't break when I shoot the wall. So I'll press play, and now okay. It doesn't break when I hit the wall. I can't shoot through the walls anymore, but there's another more glaring problem, which now the walls bleed. And
I think that just adds to the effect. I think we should keep that.
You're in a nightmare. You don't know what's real and what's not.
You can also really see how much we've offset the hit, because it's hitting the edge of the wall, right? And we have another problem here, which is what we're actually going to address tonight, which is, why did it stop firing? Why did it stop hitting the wall at all? Now nothing's happening. The reason is because the hierarchy is overwhelmed. You've added too many things in the world, and it doesn't know what to do. And they're all objects, and they're all sitting there in the scene. So if I click on the scene, you can see I have all these stupid objects hanging out. And once the impact has happened, I don't want them to hang out. The way we're going to resolve that is by remember a long time ago I said, I'm going to show you a terrible way to do this, and we're going to do it a better way later. This is the later. We're going to get to object pooling. First, though, we need to. I want to make a copy of the. First, though, we have to do a couple other things. The first is that we want to the bullet impact to look different if it's a wall versus a zombie. I know the walls bleeding is cool, but let's pretend we wanted it to look different, just for my sanity. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is we're going to refactor the project a little bit. Refactoring is computer consultant speak that just means we're going to redo it because we didn't do it the right way the first time, and we just realized, we can do this a better way. I'll say the word refactor a gazillion times because we're going to, as you slowly progress through your game, you'll learn more and more things that are more interesting and different and better ways to do stuff. And I'm always learning, so I'm always changing stuff. We've already significantly changed the way this game is programmed versus the example game that I sent out way at the very beginning was programmed. This is way better. Okay, so we're going to do a simple player, and we want to change the hit effect based on what we hit. To do that, we're going to have to create a new class. So we're going to click Add Component here, and we're going to call it Impact Handler. And we'll do Create and Add. So the Impact Handler is going to allow us to say, if I hit this thing, then then spawn this effect. This is the effect that should be spawned, rather. Okay, so I'm going to So let's go to Impact Handler. So we have a public class Impact Handler, mono behavior, blah, 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 blah. All the stuff we have always to start with. But we actually don't need the update or the start functions for this. And I'm going to blow your mind by creating a new class down below here, which we have not done yet. I'm going to create a public class called Impact. You can make it private if you want to. I make it public because I make everything public because I'm not a very good programmer. In Impact, we want to have a couple of things. We want to have a string called myTag and a game object called myImpactEffectPrefab. So my impact effect prefab is the actual blood spurt or wall dust thing. And the tag is going to be the tag that we assign in the inspector, which I'll get to in just a second. If I do this, I can't quite do what I need to do. So above public class impact, I'm going to put a square bracket and write system.serializable. And above my variables, I'm going to type serialize field. I think that will do what I want it to do for both, and if not, we'll come back and add it above game object as well. Okay, so then back up in the impact handler class, I'm going to create a public list of angle braces of impact called my impacts. Then I'm going to create a public game object get impact effect string my impact tag. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a function that will return a game object based when you give it a specific string that is a tag. I'm going to talk about tags in just a minute. We're going to do that by looping through our list that we created up above and saying, hey, if this tag matches, then I need to return that impact effect. And then at the very end, we're going to say, if you don't find the impact effect at all, if you don't find the tag at all, then there's no impact effect, so return null. So to do that, we're going to create a for loop, and you can set up hotkeys to automatically fill in for loops with logic for you. I have not done that, so I have to type this out every time. But let's say I equals 0. I is less than, and I'll explain what all this is in just a second. My impacts dot count plus 1 and I plus plus and 4. So this says what a for loop does, in case you haven't experienced it before, is it says start with an integer called I and set it equal to 0. And then as long as I is less than the total number of impacts that I have, plus 1, then cycle through the loop below and then increment I by one, exactly 1. That's what that's saying. So it will go, the first time it passes I will be 0. The second time it passes I will be 1. The third time it will be 2. And it'll keep going until when it looks at I is greater than my impacts.count, the number of impacts, plus 1. The reason you have to add the plus 1 is because it is a zero-based counting system. So if I have 2 impacts and I don't include the plus 1, then it will, the first time it passes through, it'll be 0, then it will add 1, and then the impact count will be 1. 1 is less than my impact count. It'll cycle through again, and then when it comes back the next time, it will be greater than the count. I'm not sure I'm explaining this very clearly. Point is, you have to add the plus 1, otherwise it won't go to the end of your list. Just trust me on that, and we can undo it to see it break and then come back and fix it. Anyway, so what it says is cycle through my list, and then if you we want to return. So sorry, we want to say if my impacts brace I dot my tag name, my tag is equal to my impact tag, then that's the one we want. Yeah, so if that, oh, it's double equals, sorry. Then return my impacts I dot my impact effect prefab. Okay, so go through this one more time. This is going to go through your list, look at your tag, compare the impact tag that you passed it when you called this effect, and return that game object. But you see that get impact effect is red because it's saying, hang on, not all code paths return a value. Because we specified at the beginning of this function that it should return a game object, every logical path inside the curly braces, inside the function, has to return a game object. And it's saying, I could go through the whole list and not find it. Then what do you want me to do? And what we want to do is return null. And now it's happy because it says, okay, I'm going to go through my list. If I don't find it, then I'm going to return null, which is a valid way to solve that problem. Realistically, we are going to hope that it never returns null because we want to have everything in our game have the tag that it needs to be impacted. So I'm going to click save. And I'm going to come back to Unity. Okay. So if I look at my impact handler now, you'll see it's got my impacts, which says, just as a thing, it says size 0. Size is how big is my list? How many things do you want to impact? And in this case, my size right now is going to be 2. The reason I know it's going to be 2 is because there's 2 things I want to hit. I want to hit zombies and I want to hit walls. Later on, I might want to hit other things. But now, because I have this set up this way, we can have an infinite number of things in the game. So, the first thing I'm going to hit is a zombie, so I'm going to call the tag zombie. And the impact prefab in my effects. Impact handler is going to be the effect new blood spurt that we created. And I'm going to have another one. I'm going to call it wall. And we don't have an effect for the wall yet, so let's create one very quick and dirty quickly. So I'll come in here and I'll do... actually, I can just take this and drag this in here. So I'm starting with the blood spurt effect, and I'm going to drag it back into here, and I'm going to say an original prefab. And it's going to rename it new blood spurt 1. I'm going to rename it to new effect wall impact. And I can delete one of my scene, drag it back out here, and right now it'll bleed, so I don't want that, so I'm going to get rid of blood spurt ring, delete. And and when you try to edit a prefab, you can't do that in the editor. You have to do it in the prefab editor. There's pros and cons to creating something anew every time versus using a prefab. So I'm going to delete blood spurt ring. So now I just have the fountain. If I click restart, you'll see that it sprays blood. I'm looking at it from a weird angle. So there. That's fine, except for that we don't want the blood to drop to the ground. So I'm going to take the gravity modifier here and set it to 0. And if I restart the simulation, you'll see the blood now just sprays out. It goes on for a little while too long, so I'm going to say the lifetime should be 0.5. So restart that. And now the blood comes out much more slowly. And I'm going to change the color of the lifetime from being red to being sort of a neutral gray. I think it's lighter over time. Now if I restart it. Okay, still not going fast enough. I'm going to have it go... I'm going to have their speed go up to 20. And its lifetime is still too long. I'm going to do 0.2. Let's make this 0.2 as well. And let's set this down to 10. Okay. So if I loop this, and we zoom in on it a little bit, you'll see it's just going to spit out a bunch of particles that sort of look like dust, kind of, if you squint, I guess, even though it's still using the blood splat texture. But that is fine for what we're trying to do here. So we're going to go back to our game, and you have to click the back button here. When you click back, it will say, do you want to save the changes you made in the prefab mode? And I will say, yes, I do. So now the wall impact, which still has a thing called blood spurt fountain, will be called concrete or wall hit. Yes, that's what I can call the particle instead of blood spurt fountain. And I need to uncheck looping, and I should do that in the editor. Sorry, I should do that in the. Make sure this is unchecked. Let me delete this. Bring the prefab in here. Go down here. Uncheck looping. And Okay, so when I've changed something inside one of the components, instead of going to the editor, it says I've got an override here. Do you want to apply this override that is going to change this particle system because you changed something in it? I'm going to hit apply all. Now if I delete this and come back to the wall effect, it should play only one time. And to restart. Yeah. Okay. It looks a little big in the game, so let's actually make the size. And that's because the size over lifetime here goes up to, if you remember, we have this graph down here. It goes up to size 3. Let's just make this 0.5. And let's make their start size 0.05. So now if I click restart, you can't even see it. That was much too small. Let's make this 0.5. And we'll have them go up to be a size of 1. And if I click restart now, yay, okay. You know what? Okay. It's not great, but it'll get us by. So I'm gonna click effect. I'm gonna call this wall hit. Overrides, apply all, delete the effect, drag it back into the scene real quick, zoom in so we can see it a little bit better, and I'm going to click on here, and that's fine. I can keep fiddling with it, and I'll do that all night. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as it is. It's not great, but we'll deal with it, make it look prettier later. Okay, all that to say, come back to my simple player, and I have an impact handler, and I'm going to take the effect of wall impact and drag it into that effect. That's fine, but right now we're handling the hit effect in the shot handler script. So if I press play now, just to show you what's going on right now, it's still causing the blood to spurt out when I hit the wall and the zombies. So I need to fix that. And that's handled in our shot handler script. So this is the refactoring. We're taking the instead of defining the hit effect in the shot handler script, we're going to define it using the impact handler. So I'm going to open shot handler, and I'm going to add public impact handler, my impact handler. And I'm going to define that on the start function. My impact handler equals game object dot get component. And again, you don't need game object there. I just do it out of habit. Impact handler. So that's going to get the impact handler that's associated to this game object that this script is attached to. And so before I was saying when I hit, instantiate at that point my effect, and my effect was defined as a variable up at the beginning, my hit effect. But now we want, hang on a second. Oh, right. But now we want to define the hit effect based on using the impact handler. We want it to tell me, hey, what did I hit? So to do that, we just use my hit effect is equal to, so we're defining my hit effect here as equal to my impact handler dot get impact effect. Get impact effect. And remember the get impact effect requires that we pass a string, and as you hover over it, you'll see it says I need a string of my impact tag, and we're going to get the tag by finding the hit.collider.gameObject.tag. So this says go set my hit effect to be the game object that is defined in the impact handler based on whatever my tag is in the game. I'm kind of throwing a lot at you here, so stop me if I'm going too fast or if you have any questions. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so So the impact handler, so now it's going to say, go get the tag from the object that I hit, and then that's the hit effect that I'm going to instantiate. And that is instantiated here as my effect, and it's instantiated at the point as blah, 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 as a game object, as we talked about before. Okay, so I'm going to save all of that, get back into the game. Now, there's something that we have not done yet, and that is we haven't given the things their tags. So let's hit play and see what happens. Yeah, it breaks. The reason it breaks is because the collection... really? Did I get that backwards? Let me try this real quick. Well, so the reason that it breaks... yeah, I think I did get that backwards. Let's go to the impact handler and take off this +1. That should give us a different... My count, 0, yeah. Okay. It broke again, but it broke for a different reason. It says the argument you want to instantiate is null. And the reason that it's null... So again, I went back here and I took off the +1 off the count because I got confused. I could have sworn that... Okay, doesn't matter. It went through the whole list and it said, hey, the tag of the thing that you hit is none of these things you defined, the zombie or the wall, so I returned null, and then the game broke because it's trying to instantiate something that is null. That's what I want it to do, because I want it to notify me if it gets to that step, to that state. So we defined our impact handler tags as zombie and wall, and if we go up to our tags, let's go to the zombies. We click tag, and in the drop down you'll see the word zombie is already there, should already be there, because I added it in earlier in the process. So as part of the default thing. So I'm going to tag both of the zombies with the word zombie. Then I'm going to tag my cubes, but I don't have a tag that says wall. I have one that says concrete, but I'm going to click add tag, add wall, and then I'm going to grab my cubes and click tag, and now I will tag with wall. Okay, now let's press play. And now when I hit the wall, a little effect is spawned. If I hit the zombies, blood is spawned. It's not gorgeous. And something else is happening. It is apparently saying I did not hit. I'm not hitting anything at all. You notice I'm getting the did not hit down here at the bottom? The reason for that is because... Oh, let me do it again, sorry. I'll pause the game instead of ending it. The reason for that is because it's getting overwhelmed by the effects spawning, and it's saying, "I give up. I'm not doing physics anymore for you, sir." So to deal with that, what we're gonna want to do is something called object pooling. Instead of having it instantiate a new game object every time we hit something, we want to create a pool of game objects for it to pull from at the beginning of the game. And it's just going to move those objects around inside the scene and turn them on and off as it needs to. Unfortunately, that's going to be about another hour of talking. So instead of doing that, let's have our zombies attack, and then we'll do the object pooling next week as the last thing we do to make the game work a little bit better. Because right now, you can still play it like this. It's just you'll stop getting the impact effect of hitting the walls, and you can live with that for right now. So let's get the zombies to attack, and then we'll make that the last thing tonight. Okay, so if I go to my zombie, and I go to my zombie model, and I go to my animator, you will see that I do not have an attack animation in here. I have got an idle, an aggressive run, and a death. We want to change that by adding in an attack trigger. So we're going to create a new trigger in the parameters under the zombie animator. Trigger, anim, zombie, bite. The reason I'm calling it zombie bite is because that's the attack I want to use. We will add in other kinds of attacks so the zombies aren't all biting, but some of them will be bitier than others. Then I'm going to go down to my Toon Zombies Extended, go to my animations, go to aggressive, Let's look at the attack A. I think is this one. No. Aggressive bite is the one I want. There we go. And you can see my little guy down there is doing a little bite animation attack. Okay, so I'm going to drag this aggressive bite into the animator, and I need to make a transition of telling it when to go to aggressive bite. And I'm going to make a snap decision here that I don't want it to transition from run. I want it to transition from idle, meaning I want it to be the zombie to be standing still before it tries to bite. I don't want it to be running. That means that it will give me a half a second when it gets to the player. Will transition to an idle state first, then it will go into bite. So I'm going to click make transition from idle to the bite. Click on the transition itself. It's not going to have exit time. I'm going to make it have a fixed duration of 0.25. That's fine. You can leave that. Actually, let's take the fixed duration off. Make it 0.01. And then it says transition needs at least one condition. And the condition is going to be I'm biting. And that will fire the trigger. Then I want this to trigger to transition back to idle. And in that transition, I can go ahead and leave the exit time because it's going to transition when I click the trigger, and then I want it to transition back after it plays the animation. So I'm going to leave the transition time and the exit time settings. I'm not going to touch any of that. We may play with them to make it more smooth, but this means it will translate back to the idle. This is going to cause a little bit of an issue, which let's take a look at it in the game. I'm going to hit play. And I'm going to let my zombies run over to me. And then I'm going to click, make sure I have my zombie selected. And I'm going to click, and you see he's in his idle animation. And I'm going to click bite. And he's going to bite, which is great. And then he goes back to being idle. But if I tell him to bite, he won't do it because he's not idle. So that gets to me, he bites, and he goes back. So I want to do it again, but I'm waiting for the idle animation to finish. And I'm going to click zombie bite. Let him bite me. And then see how he's moving, but he's idle? The reason for that is because it had to transition all the way back to the idle stage and then say, oh, I'm moving, and transition to the run. For now, I'm going to leave it, but we may want to add another transition from bite to run in case the player is moving away from the zombie when the zombie is biting. When the zombie bites the player, it's going to cause damage to the player, and the player already has a health script on him. No, he doesn't. We're going to add a component, health. So the player has a health. His current health is going to be 20, and maximum health is going to be 20. His current health is also going to be 20. So now the player has a health component. I'm going to make sure I didn't add that twice. I did not. Okay. So the player has a health component. So now I need a zombie attack. So I'm going to go into my zombie, grab simple AI, and I'm going to say, that's just a formatting thing because I copied and pasted something. You don't need to worry about that message. I'm going to create a new function called public void zombie attack, zombie bite. I'm not going to call it zombie attack because we're going to have zombie attacks later. And I'm going to say actually, this is an animation, so we want to do it in the animator handler, not the zombie. Well, no, we want to do it in the zombie bite here. And then we're going to call the animator handler. Right. Yes. Okay, yeah. So we'll set the animation in here. But let's do the attack first. So if you remember back in our shot handler, we said if we hit something that has health, we want it to call the health, get the game object component of health and have it take damage. We can grab that call and come back here and say, if, well, let's just have it do it every time it attacks. We're going to say, remember that we defined the player as the target at the beginning of this script. So my target dot all of that. Take damage by damage. We don't have a damage value set for the zombies yet. So let's do public as an int. Where do I find my damage? Yeah, int. So public int my damage. And we'll define, let's just set it, we'll save that. Yeah, okay. So, but when is the zombie going to bite? So it says if the zombie bite attack happens, then have the human take damage. But when does the zombie know to attack? And the answer is, if it's if it is not reached, if it's reached the target destination. In other words, if it's reached the player. So this is the block that happens if I'm alive. So in here I'm going to say if my target transform.position is less than or equal to my navmesh agent dot stopping distance. What's your problem with that? Oh, if distance I know that there's a distance function. Math f dot distance. Okay, I'm gonna have to research how to do this. So I'm gonna stop there. We've been going for kind of a while tonight, and I apologize for the interruption and for getting us stuck here. Basically, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna figure out how to say if I'm close enough to the player, then do the zombie bite, and then the zombie bite's gonna cause it to take damage, and then we're gonna have the animator play the bite attack. So I'm going to stop there, and we'll pick this back up at this exact point next Thursday night. And thank you for your time and attention. Does anybody have any questions before we go? I'm going to take that as no. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Yep. Have a good weekend.
Yep. You too. Bye.